proposed over time. There have been 450 applications for a convention over the course of history. The vast majority of them are still valid and in effect. And if 34 applications on any old topic was okay, then we'd have had a convention a long time ago. That's never been the case. We've always had the rule that you have to have agreement on the topic. So when we get to 34 states, agreement on the topic, then you can have a convention. Well, what's to prevent the convention from changing the rules at the time? The question arises because the argument's usually made. The original Constitutional Convention was a runaway convention. They didn't stick to their topic. Why will this happen? Well, that's just simply a historical lie. That's not what happened. I wrote the definitive answer to that argument in the Harvard Journal of Law and Public Policy. You can get it online for free. I have a few copies here today if you'd like to see them or have them. And it's called Defying Conventional Wisdom, How the Original Constitutional Convention Was Not a Runaway. And if you put my last name Farris in and the phrase Defying Conventional Wisdom, you can get it for free on the internet from the Harvard Journal of Law and Public Policy. The basic answer is the states called the convention, and here's what the states told their delegates to do. Render the federal constitution adequate for the exigencies of the Union. The phrase, only amend the Articles of Confederation, comes from a resolution by Congress that has the power and effect of a National Pickle Week resolution. It was basically Congress giving their opinion because under the Articles of Confederation, Congress didn't have any power to call any conventions. They had very limited power. And so the states called the convention. They told them to render the federal constitution adequate for the exigencies of the Union, and that's what they did. The idea that they were only supposed to amend the articles is a flat historical lie that defames the Constitution of the United States. People who call themselves constitutionalists on the one hand and then claim the Constitution was a result of a runaway convention are engaged in intellectual schizophrenia at a pretty deep level. The checks and balances say, start with 2/3, agreement on the subject matter. And then you go to the convention. It's one state, one vote. It can't be proportional representation because that's a Congress, not a convention. A convention of states, every convention of states that has ever been held in this country, and there have been many, it's always one state, one vote. In fact, it's a term of international law. Every international convention is one state, one vote. We call them states in international law. And that phrase carries on. It's one state, one vote. That's a structural change. But 26 states, a majority, at the convention can approve a proposed text. Then it goes to the state legislatures. 38 states have to ratify. Now, that means if a single house in 13 states vote no, it's over. You lose because it requires 38. So 13. One house going off and saying, no, we don't want this, that defeats that state. So 13 no votes in 13 chambers, we're done. The only way you can do this is if you have a sensible amendment, because it is very hard to do something good in this process. Very hard. Not impossible, but very hard. It is impossible to do anything crazy. Just you can't get it done. The structure that's in place is so solid. You cannot do something crazy. Now, there are two kinds of groups that are saying the opposite. One on the far right, one on the far left. On the far right, they're basically functional anarchists. They don't trust any government whatsoever. They don't trust this government. They don't trust their city council. They say every government's illegitimate. They're all doing the wrong thing. It's all bad. We can't run a country with functional anarchists in control. Just doesn't work. And they're saying that the checks and balances won't work because they don't trust any government at any point in time. The other group on the left, they're people that love centralized government. The more centralized, the better it is, including world government. They love things like turning over our pandemics to the federal government under the supervision of the UN. And so those people are also singing this runaway convention. You can't control it. You can't control it if your goal is functional anarchy. You can't control it if your goal is massive centralized government. Their arguments flow from their premises. Their premises are dangerous to this country. We do not want functional anarchy. We want a nation that works. And we do not want centralized runaway government. And that's what we've got in Washington, D.C. right now. We need to do the kind of government that works. That is a constitutional republic where there are limited powers at each level of government and there are functional checks and balances. The founders of this country gave every member of this committee and every member of this legislature authority to act. With that authority to check the power and abuse of the federal government, I suggest that you have the moral responsibility to do so. I would encourage you to vote favorably in this legislation. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.